Once again, we're going to go back to Baghdad Live, where John Holloman and his two other colleagues, Peter Arnett and Bernard Shaw, have been for the last...
But the meeting is coming up in a couple of hours.
Here, let me stop you for a moment. It's one of those phrases that sort of goes in one ear and out the other, cross-border fighting, and then you reflect on it. What does that mean? It sounds like an invasion, or the possibility of an invasion from Turkey into Iraq.
Well, up to now, all the forces that Turkey has assembled on the border, and they're quite substantial, have been for defensive reasons. And the planes that were taken into Turkey, both the U.S. planes and NATO planes, which included some German aircraft, were also put in there for defensive reasons. But obviously, in adopting this law, they are putting themselves in a situation where if they believe that it is becoming a threat to them, then they can cross across the border and attack Iraq.
We see from our vantage point in the center of the central city no signs of any damage from the terrific, devastating attack which occurred just a few hours ago. As I look around, I see people are going about their business now on the streets. I don't see anybody walking the streets, and there may be some concern in the minds of some people that it's still not safe. After that attack overnight in the hours of darkness, there might be some people still concerned that the attack could be continued in the daylight. There's a low cloud cover over the city, broken in some places, and there's some birds flying up in the vicinity of the sun, which is over in the east. I can see flags waving on the Iraqi National Parade ground. That's what it looks like. I'll tell you what we're hearing from official sources here. From the Iraqi media, from Baghdad Radio, Iraqi officials are saying President Bush will regret the attack. The Americans and their allies will be taught a lesson. Saddam Hussein, in an address to the Iraqi people and the Arab nation, says, "The mother of all wars has started. The victory is very near." And as we told you a few minutes ago, Patrick, we've gotten permission from Iraqi television to send you some pictures, but it appears from what we can tell, Iraqi television has no ability to transmit pictures right now. We're attempting to work with them to get those pictures to you as soon as we can, and we'll let you know when we know more about the timetable for releasing them. At any rate, here in Baghdad, things at our hotel are coming back to normal. We're attempting to...
John, excuse me just for a second, if I can. John, just a sec. We're looking at some pool video. I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but we are looking for some pool video that was apparently shot before the attacks earlier yesterday. This is pool video of an Air Force base in Saudi Arabia, apparently seeing some of the planes being readied for the attack that...
As the president ordered the attack on Baghdad, some of the Pentagon planners and the military analysts said that a sweep mission into Iraq or Kuwait would probably be led by an F-15 squadron.
Message from President Saddam Hussein at 8:30,
for...
and it'll be visible in Jordan, they say. And we need a translator.
I'm sorry, John. We were stepping all over each other. What did you say? Repeat that.
I'm sorry, Susan. I was giving our whole network, as well as our viewers, a message that the Iraqi television authorities have just told CNN they will be transmitting a message from President Saddam Hussein in just a couple of minutes. I believe 8:30 is just a couple of minutes from now. So we don't know whether they'll have the facility to do that. We hope they will, and we just wanted to alert those of the technical people along the CNN network line who have to do things for us to present those pictures to you, that we'll need a translator to translate the president's words into English, and we'll need some technical work done so that we'll be able to see and hear President Saddam Hussein, but it might be coming up pretty soon.
All right, thank you, John. We will, of course, endeavor to get that to you live, translated as quickly as possible, of course. The F-15 squadrons are supposed to be a very important part of the U.S.-led effort in an attack on Iraq or Kuwait. For example, 4 F-15s would dart ahead of a bomb-laden attack plane trying to perhaps open a furrow in the sky by shooting any Iraqi resistance. Again, there apparently was little or no Iraqi resistance. Patrick?
Again, that was pool video. We are awaiting our video from Baghdad, as we heard from John Holloman. John Sweeney is in Riyadh.
As far as we know, the F-117 stealth fighter was based elsewhere, but all of this is getting ready, I would assume, for the events that took place and that began the war this evening and the attack that proved so successful.
Indeed, that's what you're seeing, the very first pictures of These are F-15 Strike Eagle.
For breakfast in bed.
Since February 1983, when they lost it.
To the radar in the aircraft that allows it.
In the rear, the ground crews loaded many of the planes.
In some ways, better than daylight because it picks up targets in different ways. You are watching the equivalent of what was a bomber squadron.
Tony, let me interrupt you for one moment. Barry Dunsmore is standing by in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia by phone. He has seen some of this video and has some information on it. Barry, can you hear me?
Yes, Ted. It's my understanding that these are F-15s, so-called Strike Eagles, and they are at the largest U.S. air base in Saudi Arabia, and they were part of the initial attack into Iraq. Among other things, each plane is equipped with a dozen half-ton cluster bombs and 4 air-to-air heat-seeking missiles. This is the newest version of the F-15.
I think, Barry, if I could...
It's also particularly equipped with an infrared night vision system.
You were just talking about a heat-seeking missile.
It's a very similar plane to this.
You can see it right under the wing there. Tony Quartersman, am I right?
I think what you're watching is a large fuel tank.
No, I was talking about that missile that was just under the wing. Now, of course, we just have a couple of guys...
Okay, that would have been an AIM-9M or its equivalent. Again, a system somewhat similar to the ones we had in Vietnam, but perhaps 20 or 30 times more lethal in air-to-air combat.
Now, we should tell you again, this is pool video that's just coming in, and it's been fed raw from Saudi Arabia here to the United States. When I say pool video, what I mean is that the military permits a camera crew on scene. That camera crew services all the networks. This video is available to all the news organizations that need it. And Barry, I'm sorry to have interrupted you. Go ahead.
Well, basically, I think I've given you most of the material that we have on this pool. As I said, I think this is one of the units that was expected to have led the nighttime attack. And the planes, I understand, are from Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in North Carolina. And they took off at around 12:45 Saudi time. That's 8 hours ahead of Washington time.
What is, of course, going to be fascinating, Barry, is if and when we get access to the video that was shot by these aircraft as they were engaged in their combat missions. Do you have any idea?
Indeed, and I understand that will ultimately be made available in Tehran.
Teens were aloft. How long would it take them to get from Saudi Arabia to Baghdad?
I couldn't give you the exact time, but
these they have accomplished.
Go ahead, Tony. You wanted to jump in?
I think one important thing, remember, we're not going to see photographs in the normal sense. These aircraft, we're going to see copies of the radar sensors in the infrared. They're very difficult to interpret, and the ordinary person just seeing them, Ted, on television would be confronted with something that would be absolutely incomprehensible.
Well, that's why we have folks like you around, so you'll be able to interpret it for us. You know what strikes me as we look at these pictures, Tony, is how calm everything seems. I mean, I sort of had a mental image of one jet after another peeling off the runway and into the sky. And this just looks like a very quiet operation. It looks more or less the way you would expect to see things at O'Hare or Kennedy or any one of our large commercial airports.
Ted, let me make a guess. If I was allowing these photographs to be taken and released, I wouldn't be showing all the aircraft taking off in a line. I wouldn't give anyone photos that showed how many Allied, Saudi, and British aircraft were taking off at the same time. You don't want to give any information away that really shows some of the excitement or what in many ways has been the incredible shock power of an air offensive which, after all, isn't just American. It is Saudi and British, also Kuwaiti as well.
Let me just insert something here as we continue to watch this pool video from Saudi Arabia of some of the F-15s that took off earlier this evening on their bombing raids against both Iraq and Kuwait. CNN is reporting from Baghdad that Iraqi TV plans very shortly to air a message from Saddam Hussein. Now, I have absolutely no idea what's going to be in that message, except that some messages have already been broadcast on Iraqi radio. and they do not sound particularly encouraging. Let me just put my glasses on here.
Pentagon pool video.
And I will read you what I have. The 17th of January, the hypocrites struck, Saddam said in a Baghdad radio message, monitored in Nicosia. The great showdown has begun. Saddam, addressing the glorious, and this is a quote, the glorious sons of our nation, said the battle was one of justice against vice, of the believers against the infidels. With the perseverance of the believers, the dawn of victory nears as this great showdown begins. That hardly sounds like the language of a man who is about to say, I've heard you and I'm ready to talk. But again, some of these messages may indeed have been pre-recorded. That is the way things are frequently done in the Arab world. And when I say pre-recorded, I don't even mean by Saddam Hussein himself. Probably a lot of messages were given out to the radio stations. They have announcers there. You have heard and seen them, and that's the end of that video from Saudi.
Soon, and that we'll be able to see those pictures of the message from President Saddam Hussein, plus CNN's video, which we shot during the attack.